protests, do they work, or are they a waste of the advocates' time? Now, I'm basically say right from the start, I don't think that they do, and I can show you a number of instances where they haven't worked. I'm yet to see any instance in Australia where they actually have worked. So actually, while I'm talking about that one, there is something that I want to talk about that people will say is proof that they do work, though we will discuss that one in a minute. So, that being said, protests, do they work? Now, if you're a fan of protests and think that they're an effective form of animal advocacy, I'm here to tell you that they're not. The only benefit that can come out of street protests and street marches and things like that is the benefit for the person doing the protest, because they get to say, hey, we shouted at someone, we took the message to someone, we did this, we did that, and have their face on, social media. Now, which brings it back to the whole social acceptance thing. So, do protests work? I don't believe that they do. If they did, we wouldn't have live export, because there was a national day of campaigning a couple of years ago. We wouldn't have greyhound racing in any state, because there's been protests about that. The Bligh government wouldn't have sold Queensland assets, because there was a huge day of action about protest about that. What else wouldn't we have? No one would be buying CUB brewed alcohol for, since last week there was a big protest in Melbourne there was, and there was a impromptu protest or an ad hoc one that happened in Brisbane last week. Now, has it stopped people buying beer? No. Has it stopped people buying CUB beer? No. So what was the point in it? The point of that was for supposedly the people doing the protest to send a message to people in Victoria, to a brewery in Victoria, that what they did wasn't acceptable. Well, who in Victoria is going to pay any attention to something that's happening in Queensland? So yes, there's with that. Now, getting on to what I wrote down before is that I'm sure there's going to be the dyed-in-the-wool lefties that will turn around and say, well, yes, protesting does work because it was because of this that work choices were stopped. Well, I would say no, it wasn't because of the protesting that work choices were stopped and the Howard government was kicked out. To get a better understanding of that, you have to understand that there's the cycle in Australian politics where if a party has been in power for too long, that the voters will automatically just go and vote for someone else. If they're not happy with something, doesn't matter what it was, they will vote for someone else. We saw it with the Bligh election, where when Newman came into power, there was a huge swing against the ALP, and this was even dyed-in-the-wool ALP supporters who turned and voted Greens or voted Newman in because they wanted to get Bligh out, because she'd betrayed the trust of the Australian public, Queensland public. I'm getting confused with states and countries here. Had betrayed the Queensland public by not announcing the whole planned asset sales prior to the election. So she got in the election, decided that, hey, yep, this is going to happen. The same thing happened with Newman, is that there were people that, because they were led by the media, were of the view that Newman had to go, which saw Palaszczuk come to power. So what's going to happen when the next election rocks around? Who knows? I believe that there will be a lot of voter discontent, and there will be a lot of protests either going to the Greens or just away from the ALP and maybe back to the Liberal National Party in Queensland, just to protest the lack of decision making and the lack of actually real progress that's happening in the state. So anyway, that's a whole nother lesson in politics. So back with this, does protesting work? I don't think it does. You have a look at, there's been protests about greyhound racing in Queensland. Greyhound racing still happening because government is listening to industry stakeholders. I don't like the stakeholders comment. It's just a warm and fuzzy term about people that have a vested interest in that particular practice continuing. So that's happened. You have a look at all the protests that happened at the planned Cronulla Park site for greyhound racing. There was, I think it was protest over a period, about half a dozen protests over 2 or 3 years, I think it was. has been put on hold at the moment. That's been more because of the Commission inquiry into greyhound racing than it has been because of the protesting. People, as I said, there was that brewery one just recently. There was protests for whatever else. I mean, anything that you can think of. And what makes them ineffective in Australia particularly is because we have a media that is more likely to toe the government line. So pretty much the media in Australia isn't the fourth estate. They are just PR organisations for the government. Yes, the Murdoch press has their own agenda, and whatever Murdoch decides, that's the agenda with that. Whereas other media, Fairfax to a certain extent, they're very compliant with what the government demands and government wishes and towing the government line message with things. Look at the what happened with the floods and the Commission of Inquiry into the floods. It was the Age that broke it about something being evidence not being tendered into the Commission inquiry. And this is going back to all this sort of stuff. So I'm not going to big political lecture about the state of the media and politics and how they're just feeding off each other. So protesting doesn't work. I went to a number of years ago a joint ALQ and Coast to Coast Animal Friends protest against Lennon's or Stardust Circus down on the Gold Coast. The protesters never stopped people going to the circus. It didn't change the council's opinion or the council's position on having animal circuses on council land. It didn't change that. There was a couple of days of protest when the election, when the vote came up to change that particular bylaw. So this is the thing: protesting doesn't work. If you want to have an impact on government, you need to lobby government. None of this starting political party stuff. You need to actually get on the ground, talk to these particular members, talk to the politicians, talk to the ministers, and lobby government that way. So that's the thing. So who does protesting? Who benefits from protesting? As I said at the start of this episode or this clip, it only benefits the person doing the protest. I can show you the gateway to hell protest, the infamous one that happened in Brisbane, where the footage of that has been taken down. It was eight people went and stormed the offices of China Southern Airlines in Brisbane to protest China Southern Airlines, their Asian arm, transporting primates for vivisection and for medical experimentation. Did that have any impact on the decisions of China Southern Airlines internationally? No. All it did was gave these protesters the option of, hey, look, we did this, we shouted at these people, we told them what's for. Same thing happened at the circus protest on the Gold Coast a couple of years ago. All they did was shouted, got to wave their placard around, got to do this, got to do that. It's pointless. And with a media that is compliant or complicit in the pushing the agenda of the government of the day, you're not going to have it. So, it's one of those things is that it may have had an impact years ago with Australia, the way that the Australian population is and how much they believe what the media tells them. There are better things that you can do with your time. If you spend 2 hours chanting and walking through a street, could those 2 hours be better spent actually contacting and writing, making an appointment and sitting down with a particular politician, your local member or the opposition, the shadow minister for whatever? Could that 2 hours be better spent doing that? I believe yes. And as I've said in the past, I believe that political lobbying is a more efficient or more effective term of political activism than it is about pledging allegiance to a political party or wanting to form a political party to bring about change through legislation. So, what else is there? There's not much more that I can say in that. I'm sure the trolls are going to come out and say that I don't know what I'm talking about. Whereas, hey, show me anything in Australia where protesting has worked. Work choices, you can't use that as an example of where protesting has worked because the Howard government lost because people were just tired of the Howard government. Same thing happened with the Gillard-Rudd regime. They were just tired of that and brought about change. So that's about it for this one. I'm not going to rant too much more because I think I'll just start boring everyone. That's my thoughts. Let me know what you think below. Subscribe, thumbs up. What else? So yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching. This is another episode of Vegan Police TV. And remember, don't fear the vegan police. We're here to help. Nope, it's not working because I...